Hey everyone, welcome back to the second half of the Duck Knight Returns, where we finish off with issues 3 and 4. Kitty and I are both going to share our final thoughts about the first arc as well. So we're just going to jump right back into the conversation, starting with issue 3.
Kitty, you might not remember this. One year we were at Otakon, and we were in the hotel room with the rest of the people we were rooming with at Otakon, and they had dropped the preview for issue 3 of the Darkwing Duck comic. And I was reading, they do like a little preview of the first 3 pages, and I was sitting on the bed looking through it with my laptop, and I started screaming, and you were like, "Are you okay?" Do you remember this at all?
No, I'm sorry. I don't.
I remember this.
I have vague memories of you on your laptop, but I don't. The concern sounds familiar.
I remember this very well because it should not surprise you that this was a Negaduck related memory.
I was gonna say it was Jambalaya Jake's, I guess. I'm very surprised.
So we're gonna get some answers about what's been happening and why everybody is so, I don't know,
triggered.
Yes. So this was personally my favorite issue of the arc, and you're about to find out why. So
the Negapocalypse.
Yes. So Launchpad helps DW. He bails them out. They fly off into the sky, and then we get this really awkward moment between Darkwing and Launchpad where they start arguing, and we find out that Darkwing kicked Launchpad out of the house after one incident, and they're just kind of, fighting about it, and then Goslin says, "I think you guys are forgetting who the real bad guy was that day," and we head into a flashback. So we cut to the flashback of the incident. Basically, it's a regular morning in the Mallard household. They're eating breakfast at the Mallard residence, and then all of a sudden, Negaduck busts through their walls on a giant machine, and he introduces himself by saying, "Hello, Mallard household. So nice to see you. Such a nice little home you have. I should know. I've been watching it for months." And sadly, this is never mentioned or expanded upon ever again.
We'll just throw this into the ether, and you know what? Let's bury it.
Like, why was he watching them for months? How, was he, standing, My Valentine Gould standing across the street with the binoculars?
Absolutely. He was probably hiding in Herb's garbage cans.
And they just didn't notice?
No, I would... Yeah. Checks out. I mean...
There was a lot of untapped potential here, I have to say, because they never bring it up or acknowledge it again, and I don't know why. So this is why I was screaming, Kitty, because this is the first time that we've ever seen Negaduck acknowledge that he knows Darkwing Duck's secret identity and attack them at their home.
There we go.
It's a pretty big deal.
You were screaming very much like they were screaming, probably.
Yes.
You were screaming, they were screaming, and there was not a drop of ice cream in sight.
If only.
If only.
So Drake confronts Negaduck. He's like, "You just made a big mistake." And Negaduck's like, "You're the one who made the mistake." And he reveals that he figured out the connection between Darkwing's identity because of Launchpad. Negaduck apparently was taking his laundry to the worst dry cleaners in town. So I guess Negaduck does in fact clean his clothes sometimes. And
he just throws a couple onions in the dryer with them.
I would think so. He says he saw Launchpad walking out of the dry cleaners, and Launchpad was holding Drake Mallard's clothes in his arms, and he was also holding Darkwing Duck's costume in his arms, because it's Launchpad, and he would do that, probably.
But also, I mean, I know this doesn't really matter. Negaduck literally lives in the same house with the same people in the Negaverse.
Well, he does explain this. So Negaduck put 2 and 2 together, and he explains that he never had a secret identity. He didn't bother, so he just didn't consider the fact that Darkwing had one too. That's his explanation.
Okay. I mean, sure.
I mean,
He still has to go. He still has to go to sleep somewhere at night. I mean, he's also like, "Oh, that kind of looks like my buddy Launchpad. Where does my buddy Launchpad hit? Like, wait a second." And then that's when he was standing across the street, trying out everybody's garbage cans.
Probably. So we get this shot of the Mallard family photo on the ground with the glass shattered as Negaduck says, "Too bad you couldn't keep your worlds separate." But before he can continue to murder the whole family, the crime bots roll in and they arrest him.
Oh, I was gonna hope for a Muddlefoot savior.
If
That's
only.
why everything. Are the Muddlefoots in this at all?
A little bit.
Okay, good. I have something to look forward to.
Not enough, in my opinion. And in fact, I was looking, in order to chronicle this properly, I was looking through old messages and conversations. And I found a conversation where Aaron Sparrow messaged me. And he was telling me that he has to do like an 8-page short Darkwing Duck comic, but he didn't have any ideas. And he was asking me for suggestions. And the only response I gave him was more Muddlefoots.
But imagine, like, is Herb super depressed in this too? Like, is he angsty? Oh, we'll get there.
No, but okay, we'll get there. So.
Oh, okay.
Now you're worried.
I am.
So we return to the present, and Launchpad's like, "Oh, wait, that was the incident? I thought it was the shame you felt when we came in second place in the St. Canard superhero pageant." And he holds up a newspaper, and it's titled, "Gizmo Duck Crowned Best Liked." And we see a picture of Gizmo Duck smiling and waving with his arm around a very angry-looking Darkwing.
Yay.
So Darkwing starts to do more exposition about how Negaduck invading their home made him realize that he was living too dangerously. So he moved Goslin to one of the safest academies in the city, but he couldn't afford the tuition. And apparently he had a shush stipend that mysteriously vanished. So I guess this is to imply that he was getting paid by shush, and that's why he didn't have a regular job. But it just stopped all of a sudden. So he had to apply at Quackworks, and that took up all his free time, and he no longer had time for like crime fighting.
Somehow Grizzlycov got into the accounting department and told them to cut him off.
That wouldn't shock me at all.
My friend has not to be coming to my birthday party. Take his money now.
This is going to be the first time in several points throughout this series where Goslin slaps him across the face and yells at him.
Wow.
And frankly,
Okay.
it's usually deserved. But she starts lecturing him about how the phrase is "let's get dangerous." It's not "let's get dangerous until they find out where we live," or "let's get dangerous unless we can't afford it." And Launchpad agrees. Darkwing Duck is filled with determination. Darkwing Duck is back, baby.
Oh boy.
So now we're back to the Fearsome Four, and Liquidator is mentioning how he was Quackworks. His job was that he was the water supply for Quackworks. So apparently, was everyone drinking him?
Oh.
That seems very cruel.
Yeah. I mean, unless he likes it.
He didn't seem to. He didn't seem to at all. And then, so the four are standing around, and they spot the Thunderquack flying above. And then we hear the one and only swear word in this entire series. Where
Can I guess what it is?
Okay, go ahead.
Hell?
No.
Is it worse than hell?
I'd say on the same level. Megavolt can say but only once.
Only once. Let Megavolt say
But no. So Megavolt says, "Where's he been? I bet he had a crappy office job all this time."
Oh, crap.
Slipped through the cracks, because that shouldn't have been in there. But it got through.
So, I want to point out, though, that they could very easily get revenge on all of their bosses at once by blowing up the one building where all their bosses live. Or not live, but work.
I guess
instead
they
of random
could.
toy stores. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
To be fair, it's the Fearsome Four, and I feel like they're not the smartest bunch when they're together. So
What?
I'm not surprised.
Shocking.
So everyone piles into the Quackermobile, which is what I'm calling it, and Quackerjack forcefully uses Megavolt as a battery to power the car into a jet. And I need to point out to you that this is the first instance of many where we randomly get a weird flying, hovering vehicle in this series. It reoccurs several times for some reason.
Buy all our playsets and toys.
So now they're in the air and they're tailing Darkwing and the gang. And they realize that the four are the ones attacking them because I guess Bushroot was throwing beets at them or something. And they're like, well, it must be the fearsome four.
Okie dokie.
And so Launchpad's like, I'll just shake him off. And he starts, trying to fly through things and like elude them. Quackerjack says, he wants a game of hide and seek. Well, two can play at that game of hide and seek because that's how it's played.
There we go.
And this, of course, all attracts the attention of the crime bots who give pursuit to both of the parties because they're like shooting lasers and all kinds of stuff is happening.
I bet you Bushroot's gonna beat him.
There could have been a beat joke in there somewhere, but no. Instead, we're going to head back to Honker, who is now in what looks like a torture room / medical office. And the disembodied voice tells Honker that he has to repeat a word on the TV screen, or he has to say one thing. So there's this giant metal box in the corner that's locked up, and it's labeled top secret. Honker is looking at the screen, and he repeats several words. The first one is aardvark. The second is abozo, which I looked up the definitions for some of these words. Abazo, which is the first draft of an art piece. Basiferous, which means to produce or bearing berries. Dactylomegaly, which is an abnormal enlargement of fingers or toes.
Okay.
Ways goose, which apparently is, this is oddly specific, but it's a traditional holiday that marks the end of summer and the start of the season of working by candlelight.
Ooh, romantic working.
And then finally, the last word is zugmedo, which apparently I could not find a definition for, so that might have actually been made up.
Zugmedo. Okay.
But Honker complains. He was only asked to say one thing, and the voice replies yes, and that one thing is the entire English language.
Okay.
So it's hinted at that Honker has to keep saying a bunch of words in the dictionary, and something's supposed to happen with that top secret case that is in the corner. Like, it's supposed to react to the word.
Oh, so like, yeah, they're trying to find the code word by making a child say every word ever.
Yes, it
seems like a solid plan.
Yeah, trust me, we're gonna get there in the next issue, and okay. So the TV in the room where Honker is picks up footage of the thunderquack, and the voice is like, I don't need you anymore, bye, and just kind of gets rid of him. Quackerjack's car jet thing has transformed into a giant rainmaker with lightning, and
okay.
and it's like raining down upon the thunderquack. But they're so distracted that the crime bots corner them, and they electrocute the Quackerjet, and everybody on there is zapped. And suddenly, we're brought back to another flashback, and this one is with Quackerjack.
Where he accidentally stuck his fork in the toaster and electrocuted himself. Toaster Negaduck, and he was super pissed at it. Is it a rule in the Darkwing Duck universe that everybody has to have a vehicle that looks like their face?
I'm going to say yes.
It feels like it's a really easy way to find your car in the mall shopping parking lot.
All right, so we're heading into Quackerjack's flashback, and it sends us back to an incident, and I shouldn't have to tell you that this is a Negaduck-related incident because everything that happens is Negaduck's fault. Let's be real here. So the five have finished up a heist, kind of similar to the beginning of Life the Negaverse and Everything, where they're counting their loot, and Negaduck is like, see ya, losers, and he takes his loot, and Quackerjack chases after him and points out that his portion of the loot seems a little unbalanced. And Negaduck explains that it has to be because he has a lot of stuff to buy, like flamethrowers, chainsaws, flaming chainsaw throwers, the classics, because he's discovered Darkwing's secret identity.
I feel like the perfect response to that in usual Negaduck fashion would have been not to explain it, but if Quackerjack had said, it's unbalanced, and then Negaduck would have been like, well, yeah, so are you, and just kept walking.
And then maybe hit him with the sack, which I think he
Yes.
did technically in the episode.
He sure did.
So Quackerjack begs Negaduck to join him, and Negaduck grabs Mr. Banana Brain out of Quackerjack's hands, and he shreds Mr. Banana Brain into thousands of tiny pieces.
Okay, so a couple issues ago, he said that Quacker Works was the reason why he lost Mr. Banana Brain.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, I'm here.
Yes.
It's making perfect sense.
Continuity.
Yes.
Tadstones would be proud, I'm sure.
As a single tear rolls down his cheek.
And then Negaduck, as he's ripping it apart, he says something like, "Face it, clown, you're just not mean enough for this job. This is a job fit for only the best villain in town." And then he takes off, and Quackerjack, there's like a panel of him down on his knees, looking down sadly at the torn pieces of Mr. Banana Brain. And then we're brought back to the present, where Quackerjack is muttering.
Gosh, it sure would be a shame to, make Quackerjack make a toy. Like, to sew it back together.
I don't know what to tell
He
you.
can build jets and every other thing, but he doesn't know how to work a needle and thread. Okay, all right.
So Quackerjack's muttering to himself, "I'll show Negaduck. I'll show the whole world mean enough." And then we back up and we see that he and all the four and Launchpad and Goslin and Darkwing are all tied to those like dentist-y torture chairs.
Okay.
So they're being held prisoner. Then we see a mysterious silhouette that looms behind them with a glowing red eye. And the silhouette says, "Negaduck. Ah, yes, one of your pathetic costume fools that used to run around this city like unsupervised children." And then we reveal the true mastermind behind it all, and it's Taurus Bulba.
Dun, dun, dun.
And he tells us that the only true way to gain power in this city is through corporate takeover. He's not totally wrong.
He's not, but it doesn't seem very Bulba-y.
Yeah, because he was the opposite. He was like a crook, like a dirty crook, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, here we are.
We're on-
Decisions have been made.
We're on to the final issue of the Duck Knight Returns, issue 4. Gonna sweep this whole thing up. Ahem.
Very satisfactory conclusion, I have no doubt.
Yes. So we see that everyone is being kept on what appears to be a space station. Like it's above the city, and you can see the shape of the planet. So they're high enough that they're not really in space, but they're really high, is I guess what it's implying.
Okay. Sure.
And for some reason, Megavol is now narrating the comic. But that's not really... But it's not made clear because like you're seeing the words. You know how they do like the little narrations for talking, but you don't see the people yet. So it's Megavol, but we don't even know it immediately. And I don't know. I think that was kind of poorly set up. But he says, "It's Taurus Bulba, one of the big shot bad guys. A real big shot. The guy behind my outage as a supervillain." I don't know what he meant by that.
Me either.
I guess he meant being forced to be like a regular person working.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But he says, "Well, no more, pal. I'm about to cut your power." And then Megavolt powers up and he zaps Bulba, which causes all the chairs to release their vice grip on everyone. And then we get this pretty cool 2-page spread of Darkwing and Launchpad and Goslin and the Fearsome Four, and they're all beating the crap out of Bulba.
Oh, okay. The rest of the comic is wrap-up.
Everyone is letting loose and they're all shouting about the stuff that Bulba is responsible for. So Megavolt shouts about how he was stuck behind a desk filing papers and trying to place the face of his cube mate. Quackerjack talks about how his talents were wasted working for morons who were confused by the yo-yo. Liquidator says he had to listen to every insipid water cooler discussion because he was inside all the water coolers. Which, again,
Yeah.
very unfortunate for everybody involved in that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any winners there.
And then Bushroot, who I think has the corniest line of them all, and I couldn't take it seriously, he says, I had to sit by and watch everyone let the plants in their workspace die. It was a massacre.
No.
I was like, well, couldn't he just
taking care of them?
Yeah, like, couldn't he just water them? What was his
pour
job?
Liquidator on him.
Yeah.
Was he in landscaping? Then it seems like you didn't do your job then, buddy.
And then Launchpad adds in with this list of complaints that says, you made St. Canard a heck of a lot less fun.
Yeah.
And Goslin, who, has the most traumatic history with this person who murdered her grandfather, says, you kidnapped me, tried to get my grandfather's code for his invention. Darkwing beat you then, and he'll beat you now.
And I mean, that other time where you tried to kill me and Honker.
Yes.
So he's the Steerminator, or is he?
He's the Steerminator, yes. He's still, robotic. So Bulba has had enough. He sends the Fearsome Four down a chute, and they land in the office where there's an HR bot waiting for them. And the HR bot...
When they were hanging over the trapdoor, because that's how I imagined it happened, did one of them go, oh, shoot?
No.
Because they should have. And then fallen down the chute.
Once again, missed opportunities, my friend.
And also, I was thinking about this before, because you mentioned something that I was like, oh, that'd be an HR nightmare. Can it really be called human resources?
I don't know.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Much like Darkwing Duck at the beginning of this despondent thing, I don't know.
I don't know, honey. I don't know.
So the HR bot tells them he's going to give them an employee evaluation of doom. And then we hear them all screaming in horror. And that's the last we see of them for this issue.
Oh, okay.
And then Darkwing Falcon punches Bulba. Goslin exclaims, keen gear! And for some reason, this causes the top secret metal case to react.
What? But that's 2 words.
We'll get there. So, because apparently the only way this stuff can be done is through exposition, that makes no sense, a TV turns in the middle of all this, and I forget the timeline of events here, but at this point, Bulba has either been punched away or he's been punched into a wall or something. But they start feeding us exposition because Bulba apparently wrote a biopic about himself, and it goes into what happened to him. And it says that after an uncharacteristic mishap that destroyed his cyber body, which is never explained, Bulba is somehow trapped in a blender invention created by Gyro Gearloose. But soon he masters the ability to transfer his consciousness into electronics. Again, this is never explained.
Okay.
So Bulba is a blender in Gyro's lab, and he rebuilds himself.
But can we just pause for a moment?
Sure.
So that we can soak in that sentence you just said. Bulba is a blender in Gyro Gearloose's lab.
I think it's called the Blendito, if I recall correctly.
Oh, well, that makes more... Go ahead. That totally is... That's fine. Go. It makes so much more sense.
So, also, the Gizmo suit was in the lab at the same time, but Bulba discovers he can't seem to possess it for some reason. And I guess Gyro either tells him the code word, blathering blatherskite, or Bulba tries to use it, and it doesn't work. But he steals the suit, and he leaves. And Gyro's
so
like...
Is Gyro openly conversing with a blender?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's Gyro, so I don't know.
Yes, I mean, it's not completely out of the realm of Gyrodom, but I just wanted to make sure in my head that I'm picturing Gyro having an in-depth conversation with a blender about not stealing the Gizmo suit.
Well, he turns into Bulba again because when he gains this ability to I guess, possess electronics. He pulls a bunch of stuff in the room together, and he basically forms himself back into what looks like the Steerminator.
Is Bulba's head in the blender?
I'm sorry.
I don't understand.
Your
how we
confusion.
got here. Like, is Tourist Bulba in the Quackworks place? Is his head a blender?
He is the blender. He is a blender, a talking blender. But then he pulls all this like spare parts of machinery in Gyro's lab to form himself again. I don't know.
So is the blender the head of the Steerminator?
No, he looks like the Steerminator.
So the suit thing looks like the Steerminator and he carries around a blender? I don't understand.
Basically, his head is like his regular Bulba head with like half of it being electronic. So like I don't even know where the rest of his head came from.
Can he like pop the top of his helmet off and make a milkshake sometimes?
The blender.
So smoothie. The smoothinator.
The blender is no longer.
I don't understand what's happening.
Okay, I need a minute.
Was the blender in the box? Is that what happened? She unlocked the box?
The blender is no longer part of this. It's gone.
Oh, that's the best part. Okay.
Okay.
Blender and be done with it at the end of a flashback.
Okay, so this is where everything gets really weird. So
Really? Okay.
So Gyro, I don't understand this at all, like the logic behind this. So Gyro's like, well, I'm going to change the password of the suit so you cannot use it, because Bulba is like, well, if I can't use it, I need to find somebody that I can control and make them use the suit. And Gyro's like, well, I'm going to change the code word. And then Bulba says, good. I hope you change the code word because, what was his logic here? Okay, yeah, he says, let him change the code. Then he can take over St. Canard and force everyone to say every word in the English language, just to show what power really is.
I mean, it's very bold to assume that it would even be an English word.
Yeah.
I feel like Gyro could have just thrown in spanakopita and it would have been fine.
I don't understand that, like, if he could murder Gyro, essentially, or stop him from changing the code word, he could just find someone and have them say the code word he already knows. But instead, he let Gyro change it just so he had to go through the effort of, like, torturing Honker and making him say every word.
He just loves to watch people read the dictionary. But also, what does he need the gizmo suit for? He just made a whole other...
He's just
himself with a flesh head.
He's not really.
Man.
That's not explained. It's just kind of implied that because he can't possess it, he assumes it's powerful and he's going to use it for something.
He's obsessed with it.
But the irony is that to do all this, he basically reveals
it's made out of an iron.
He reveals that he formed Quackworks and used Quackworks to take over St. Canard just so he can gain access to the gizmo suit. But I feel like at that point, he's already taken over the city. He doesn't need the gizmo suit. He's already in charge.
And why would the gizmo suit be there?
Because he stole it. So he has the suit, but he can't access it. So he
but like if he makes this big police state just so he can sit in a room and rotate his blades while looking at a gizmo suit that he already has.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So we find out the new code is Keen Gear. And Goslin had exclaimed it earlier, so the suit attaches to her and she becomes Gosmo Duck.
Okay.
Taurus Bulba curses them. Yeah. I'm gonna have to censor so many words in this
Please
episode
do.
with our Comet Guy censorship laugh.
Uh-huh.
Goslin tries to fight off Bulba, but he captures her. Darkwing does his I am the terror line, which is I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the monkey wrench in the quackworks. Bulba blasts a hole through the space station, which sends Darkwing dangling outside of it, and they're dangling like thousands of feet above the ground. So then we get this dramatic moment where Bulba is asking Darkwing if he's willing to die for everyone, and Darkwing looks up at him and says, gladly.
You could fight back a little bit, but...
So Darkwing fires, I guess, his gas gun at Bulba, but it bounces off the wall, hits Bulba, which causes both of them to fall out of the space station to their doom. But Launchpad catches Darkwing with a thunderquack, and Bulba falls to the ground and makes a pothole right in front of the Quackworks building.
The end of Darkly Dawns the Duck.
Yes, somewhat.
Yeah.
So everybody thinks that Bulba is dead because he was mooshed into the ground and his electronics are all broken. But then he proclaims that he has fit the Quackworks building with nanotechnology.
Ooh.
And I have to tell you, this is not the last time we're going to randomly see nanotechnology used as a plot device. So he decides that he's going to destroy the whole city, and Launchpad and Darkwing are dodging lasers. Gosmo Duck appears to rescue them. And then Goslin says she's discovered that the suit can override the crime bots, so she's going to plug it into Taurus Bulba because she could probably override him too. So she electrocutes him, but it electrocutes her as well. Bulba dies, quote unquote, in the sense that like it shows the screen goes black on his thing, because now his head was like, he was initially like Taurus Bulba, and then I seem to recall that at some point he switched over and his head was a TV. But Goslin was also electrocuted, and she's lying there like she's dead. And we get this dramatic moment of Darkwing dropping to his knees and pulling his daughter into his arms and crying. And he's like, oh no, Goslin. And then he says, you were always my superhero. And then she wakes up and says, likewise, Dad. And then she hugs him back. And we get this beautiful father-daughter moment. And now we wrap things up. We cut to the conclusion of this arc. The government has decided that Quackworks is too big to fail. So rather than shut the whole thing down, they give it to Scrooge McDuck to oversee its restructuring. And the first thing Scrooge does is he removes the crime bots off the street, replaces them with cops. He also starts offering incentives to competing businesses to help wean St. Canard's citizens back into working places other than Quackworks. And I'd just like to state for the record that he said wean as in W-E-E-N. It should have been...
Halloween?
Yeah, like ween is spelled W-E-A-N. But whatever.
Also, I think it's pretty bold for whoever wrote this to assume that Scrooge McDuck would ever pay police officers if there was an automated way to do things.
It gets even better.
Cheaper. Oh, good. Cheap labor. Okay, yes. Good. Let's go.
So we see Megaville and Quackerjack are back in prison. Quackerjack is shouting about something, and one of the guards grabs his Mr. Banana Brain and rips it to shreds for no reason.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Now he can curse out the guard too.
I was about to say there's a blood feud against that guy.
Then Scrooge announces that he's appointing a new CEO to Quackworks. And DW, of course, thinks it's going to be him for some reason. I don't know why Darkwing would want to oversee an entire company full-time. But no, he offers the job to Launchpad McQuack because he trusts Launchpad.
Does no Scrooge ever.
I know. I feel like Scrooge would not do that because he would know that if he's going to lose money on this, why would he pick Launchpad of all people to risk, finances and stuff?
I mean, I guess if he's trying to crash it into the ground, then he's got his guy.
Yeah, this is going to come full circle eventually. You will see. Goslin is sad because she knows she has to give back the Gizmo suit, and Launchpad tells her she can hold on to it for a little while, and they agree that she can only use it in the case of a serious emergency. There is no mention of
Okay.
Fenton Crackshell or his whereabouts, by the way. We don't know why the Gizmo suit is empty of its person.
Like, if flash forward somewhere else to Fenton yelling, blathering blatherskite at a blender and being very confused as to why.
Oh, don't worry. We're going to get there. We're going to get there eventually.
Okay.
So,
Good.
so then let's see here. We get a happy little scene where Gauze asks Darkwing if she's still his superhero, and Darkwing says, as long as I'm still yours. And then you get like a little narrative commentary that's over the top that's red and yellow, and it says, "Aw, so precious, but you know what?" And then we cut to the last page, and it's a Negaduck gazing into a crystal ball alongside Magica Dispel. And he says, "I just hate a happy ending."
Bum, bum, bum.
And we also see that they're in a train station of some sort, and there's a map behind him that says Trans-Dimensional Express Routes. So it gives us a hint of what's to come in the next arc. Crisis on Infinite Darkwings.
So the last that we saw of Negaduck in this arc is that he got dragged away by the crime bots?
Correct.
Okay.
And they will explain what happened to him after that, sort of. But I have to say, we are at the 1 hour and 35-minute mark, and we're only through the first 4 issues. So we could do this a few ways. We can do this, I don't know, maybe 1 arc per episode.
Yep.
Because I don't think I can go through all of this. I don't think either one of us can weather the challenge of all of this in one go. It's too much.
Yeah, we really shouldn't blend them all together. I think we should keep these arcs separate so that I have a while to digest what I just heard.
So what are your thoughts? Give us your final thoughts here, Kitty, since this is your first time hearing all this.
Well, I think I made the right call in not reading it, because I feel like I would have been extremely angry if I had gotten to the end of this comic arc. I liked hearing you tell me about it, but it just doesn't really make any sense. I feel like as far as everything concerned, it just didn't... who wanted this? I mean, I'm glad that somebody, or I guess it was Aaron, was like, I need to make a Darkwing Duck comic because it would be great, and it it scratched an itch. But also, like, what? Who did he write it for? Who did they write it for? Because it didn't really seem to do anything as far as like appeasing the fans or doing anything that would have it be stand out on its own that would draw in new people. It just seemed like, here's some hackneyed things, and we don't really explain who anybody is, and we don't really do anything interesting except for make Quackerjack unnecessarily edgy. And it comes down to, you had like the A-list villains in this story and still fell on Taurus Bulba as a blender to tie it all together. Like, it could have really been so much more than what it was. Like, even if it would just stuck to like the mystery of the office, like, and if it was just a new villain or somebody, one of the villains that we know already, just as the boss, but not in a kitschy kind of, and now she has it, then because he wants to know the code words to the gizmo. They just threw everything at it, and not in a way that seemed satisfying or even made any sense.
Well, I'm here to grab the time turtle and tell you that back when this was released, everybody quite enjoyed it. But I also feel like, as we said at the beginning of this episode, we were starving for Darkwing Duck content. And I think we were willing to take what was given to us just to see our favorite characters again. And I mean, I was very happy to see Negaduck, even if it was in the flashbacks and then the surprise reveal at the end. All that stuff, like, I loved the artwork. I'll tell you that. Like, the artwork was great. there was some funny lines and there was some good setup. So like I wouldn't say like I hated it. I remember at the time I quite enjoyed it, but I'm going to tell you right now that this is as good as it gets. It just continuously, in my opinion, I should have done a disclaimer at the beginning because I didn't want to insult people who like the comics.
Oh, do it now and then put it at the beginning when you edit it.
Okay. This is technically at the end of the episode, but I'm going to move it to the front of the episode. Disclaimer number 1. I just want to say that I have no personal issues against anyone who wrote the comics or was responsible for the comics, because there's parts, as Kitty and I work through this whole series, there's parts of this that I'm going to be incredibly critical about. And I just want to make it clear that I don't actually have any personal issues with any of the people involved. It's just me criticizing, the content as a fan and where I wish it could have gone, that sort of thing. And the second thing is that if you enjoyed the comics, I think that's totally fine. There's a lot about the comics that I really liked. We'll get into it, though. Yeah. That's all I can say.
If you like the comics, proceed with care, because as I am currently future Kitty right now, I did not care for the comics. So I'm sorry, dear friends, but if you like it, then just keep in mind that everybody has an opinion and that it doesn't lessen your love of a thing if I don't necessarily care for it. It can be special and good for you, and it's just not my slice of pie. So that is our disclaimer. Yes. Proceed with care. Do not hate us too much.
One thing about a lot of this comic that is kind of weird is that Aaron Sparrow pitched it and he wrote out a bunch of arcs and he had it planned. But my understanding is that he was fired pretty early on, so Ian Brill was writing the comics. So he did most of like the dialogue and the plotting and all that stuff. James Silvani tried to help a little bit and tried to fix a few things, but he's the artist, so he only has so much power. And what happened was Aaron Sparrow and James got a hold of the license and they basically took these comics and they didn't change all of like the artwork. There's a few panels that get changed, but they rewrote a lot of it and they turned that into what's known as the Definitively Dangerous edition.
So what we just discussed, was that the Definitively Dangerous, or was this the original cut?
The original. This is the original Ian Brill, Boom Studios. We'll get to I'll talk much later down the road about the differences between the two, because basically Aaron goes in and he can't change everything in the plot because they're not changing the artwork for it, so you have to work within the panels, but he changes the dialogue in a lot of places and he changes some of the motivation of the characters and stuff. So this is definitely separate, and there is kind of a debate among fans as to whether the Boom Studios version is better or worse than the Definitively Dangerous edition.
Okie dokie. So there we have it.
Because there's a lot of background drama to this whole thing, with all the
drama.
A lot of controversy between the writers and who was responsible for what. Ian Brill claims he wrote and was responsible for some things. Aaron Sparrow says otherwise. There's a back and forth. But what we're going to see, as I was telling you, is that, in my opinion, it just gradually goes downhill. And when we get to it, I'll tell you which issue was for me personally. When I first read this stuff, I was like stars in my eyes. I couldn't find no wrong in anything because I was just like, I'm a fan and I love every Darkwing Duck thing and I will accept every bit of Darkwing Duck content that is given to me. That, what would you call that? Like amazement? Rose tinted glasses? I don't know what.
For me, I'm seeing this as most things happen in my brain. I'm associating it with The Simpsons. There's an episode of The Simpsons where Lisa is a vegetarian and Homer wants to have a pig roast in the backyard. So through mishaps and shenanigans, she pushes the pig down the street and Homer is chasing it. And he's just like, it's just a little airborne. It's still good. It's still good.
I love
And
that
he just
episode.
keeps running. So there's this whole thing, and then he's like, it falls into the water. He's like, it's just a little, and then he finally is like, oh, because he can't justify that it's still good anymore. So I feel like that's you and these comics. It's like, it's a little, it could use a little work. It's still good. It's still good. Oh, I see what they're doing. They're trying to do this. It's still good. It's still good. And you're just like, oh.
That's exactly what happened, because by the time we get to, I think it's issue 7, that's when the magic wore off for me. And I was like,
Ooh, that's not a very long run at all.
And that's and that also coincides, to be fair, with my bias, was that wasn't too long after I went to New York Comic Con, and I started talking to the people involved with the comics, and I started hearing a lot of the inside gossip and like just the background. So I think
you got to see how the sausage was made.
yes, so I think all of that combined, that's about the point where I was like, I went from, oh, I'm enjoying this, to I don't like this. I'm not okay with this.
I know too much.
And I shouldn't have to tell you that what triggered it was a Negaduck characterization type thing.
He's very tricky to do right.
The Negaduck factor does not pull through in some parts of this. It pulls through for parts of it, definitely, like just including him, like brought up, I was like, yeah, a whole arc now that's going to have Negaduck. And that really, I can't hate that. I can't hate all the beautiful Negaduck panels that have been blessed upon me that I continue to gaze upon sometimes when I need the inspiration.
It gets you through the day.
Yes.
With a sneer. Sneer and a snark.
Yeah, so we'll do Crisis on Infinite Darkwings next week. And that is, what do you know? I feel like you must know something about this one, because there's always artwork about it online, and like, panels get posted. Do you know anything about it?
Well, I know that there is a bowling ball, Darkwing Duck, and that there is a Quiverwing Duck.
Yes.
And that... Is this the one with the Cthulhu thing?
No.
Okay, then I don't know that about this one. And that there's a Sailor Moon Darkwing.
Yes! I love how you remember that.
I feel like I've seen the splash page a bunch with all of them together looking very concerned about something. And that I know it started the shipping of your two favorite characters, Negaduck and Magica Dispel. But yeah, I don't know much about this one, so I hope it's full of blenders.
Stay tuned, everybody, because next week we're covering Crisis on Infinite Darkwings.
But until then, crime doesn't read, and neither do we. We do read. Sorry.
Have a good day, and please don't let your blender possess you.
For the love of God, don't say Keen Gear next to a blender. Sets him off.